Before The Matrix questioned the nature of reality, before Inception bent dreams into metaphysics, there was Total Recall, a sci-fi fever dream wrapped in muscle, blood, and existential dread.
Can you hear yourself? She's real because you dreamed her.
That's right.
Swallow this. It's a symbol of your desire to return to reality.
Let's say you're telling the truth and this is all a dream. Then I could pull this trigger and it won't matter.
That's for making me come to Mars.
Howdy, Quaid. It's my body you've got there, and I want it back.
Relax, Quaid. You'll like being Hauser. Fire it up, Doc.
Released in 1990 and directed by Paul Verhoeven, my favorite Dutch madman, Total Recall is a film that shouldn't work as well as it does. It is, on the surface, a genre oddity, a hard R, high-concept blockbuster that combines ultra-violence, big ideas, violent imagery, surreal comedy, and Arnold Schwarzenegger at the absolute peak of his Schwarzenegger-ness.
You think this is the real Quaid? It is.
And yet somehow it all coalesces into one of the greatest science fiction films ever made. This is not hyperbole. Total Recall is phenomenal because it makes its spectacle mean something. It's a movie that throws the audience into a dizzying identity crisis and then detonates the ground beneath their feet, all while firing off one-liners, morphing faces, and juggling the collapse of an entire colonial regime on Mars. It does this with the confidence of a director completely in control of tone and chaos, and with a lead actor whose very presence becomes a thematic question mark. Is this man really a hero or a lobotomized victim? Based loosely on Philip K. Dick's short story, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, the film follows Douglas Quaid, a seemingly ordinary construction worker. Okay, that part is probably a stretch. But Quaid is haunted by dreams of Mars and a life he never lived. Craving more than the monotony of his daily grind, and against the warning of his suspiciously perfect wife, Quaid visits a company called Recall, which specializes in implanting synthetic memories that function as holidays.
Where you can buy the memory of your ideal vacation cheaper and better than the real thing.
From there, the narrative fractures into a kaleidoscope of shifting truths, conspiracies, corporate overreach, psychic mutants, and interplanetary revolution. The central question, what is real and what is implanted, never finds a clean answer. That ambiguity is the point. And in Verhoeven's hands, that ambiguity becomes exhilarating. This is a director who never shied away from excess, but who always had razor-sharp intent behind the chaos. Like RoboCop before it, Total Recall weaponizes satire to explore power structures, corporate slavery, and the commodification of the mind. But where RoboCop was dystopian steel and urban decay, Total Recall is blood-soaked Technicolor delirium, set against the backdrop of a Martian colony built on oppression, rebellion, and oxygen deprivation. It's a film constantly at war with itself, cartoonishly violent yet philosophically dense, pulpy yet profound, absurd yet terrifyingly plausible. What makes Total Recall great is not just its brilliant production design, Jerry Goldsmith's throbbing score, or the astonishingly tactile visual effects, which still hold up in the age of digital sterility. It's the fact that every frame pulses with intent. Every action beat is in service of a deeper question. Every mutant and corporate enforcer is a reflection of a world that has blurred the lines between reality and fiction, autonomy and illusion, identity and narrative control. And anchoring it all is Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose very presence is weaponized. His physicality is so outsized, so mythic that it becomes alien. Is Quaid a real man, or is he a manufactured hero fantasy imprinted on a blue-collar drone? Is he a rebel survivor, or a violent delusion run amok? Verhoeven never answers, instead he leans into the question. Hey guys, what's happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we're breaking down the production history, the story and characters in Total Recall, as well as exploring the short story it was based on. Don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification icon to stay up to date on all the latest content here, and click the like button to help appease the algorithm gods. Also, if you'd like to make a suggestion on what you want me to cover next, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments below.
Phil Dick is concerned with what is reality. Virtual reality, the idea, you feed the senses and your brain will construct an entire world inside of your mind. Philip Dick went into very well and very clearly that if you have a virtual reality, you can't tell the difference. I mean, it's not as if you have a bad, fake virtual reality. And the beauty of the concept is that, no, it's a virtual reality that's indistinguishable from reality.
Your brain will not know the difference.
Philip K. Dick's We Can Remember It For You Wholesale is one of the most compelling and philosophically rich stories in modern science fiction. A paranoid, mind-bending meditation on memory, identity, and the fragile boundary between fantasy and reality. This story is a masterclass in narrative compression and conceptual density. With his signature wit and existential dread, Dick constructs a Kafkaesque reality where the truth of your life may not only be uncertain, it may be unknowable. The story centers on Douglas Quayle, a mild-mannered office worker living in a new future Earth who harbors a deep obsession with Mars. He dreams constantly of going there, though it remains financially out of reach. Tired of his pedestrian life and nagging wife, Quayle decides to visit a company called Recall Incorporated, which specializes in implanting false memories, highly realistic artificial experiences of events that never happened. Rather than save up to go to Mars, Quayle plans to have the memory of a Martian vacation installed in his brain. Why bother with the actual experience when the memory of it, perfectly rendered and implanted, is just as emotionally satisfying? This is when we're plunged into Dick's core thematic obsession, the instability of reality and the collapse of authenticity in a world dominated by psychological manipulation. At Recall, a salesman pitches Quayle on a deluxe package, not just memories of a Mars trip, but of a secret agent mission to Mars. It's a thrilling fantasy that offers a temporary escape from Quayle's unremarkable life, but as the technicians begin the process of memory implantation, something goes wrong. During sedation, Quayle starts recalling actual memories of a covert mission to Mars as an assassin for a secret government agency. What was meant to be a fabricated memory is revealed to be real. This upends everything, not only for Quayle, but for Recall, the government, and the reader. The firm hastily refunds his money and erases the memory of their failed procedure, but it's too late. Quayle's true past has been partially awakened, and he's now a threat to national security. The government, realizing that his suppressed memories could expose dangerous secrets, sends agents to intercept him. As the story unfolds, Quayle is confronted with the horrifying ambiguity of his own past. He is not the man he thought he was. He might have been a government-trained killer. He might have already been to Mars, and he might have suppressed the memory of it himself. But Dick doesn't stop there. As Quayle negotiates with his would-be executioners, he proposes a solution: implant an even deeper, older false memory, one in which he saved the Earth from an alien invasion as a child, thus making him psychologically incapable of betraying the planet. It's a ludicrous fantasy, but as the government prepares to proceed, it is revealed that this too is not a fabrication. This childhood fantasy was also real. Quayle did stop an alien invasion, and the aliens promised not to return so long as he was alive. In killing him, the government may be dooming the Earth. The story ends on that grim note. What began as a simple request for a vacation has become a metaphysical nightmare. Not only is Quayle's identity lost in the swirl of competing narratives, but reality itself becomes impossible to separate from illusion. Truth is recursive, layered, and ultimately unknowable. At its core, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale is about the malleability of memory and the construction of identity. Douglas Quayle is in many ways a proto-Neo, a prelude to the endless line of sci-fi characters who discover that their lives are fabricated. But unlike many later stories that tie this revelation to external systems, like The Matrix or The Truman Show, Dick focuses the crisis inward. Quayle isn't living in a simulated world, he's living in a world where his mind is the simulation. If all experiences are neurological, and if memories can be convincingly inserted or deleted, then what does truth mean at all? This is Dick at his most potent, turning a sci-fi concept into an ontological crisis. The government's casual ability to delete and rewrite a man's history underscores a chilling view of bureaucratic authoritarianism, while Quayle's deep yearning for purpose, his desire to matter, is weaponized by corporations and institutions for control. His desire to be important, to be heroic, is precisely what gets him destroyed. It's no coincidence that Quayle chooses the fantasy of being a secret agent. This points to Dick's repeated exploration of male anxiety and power fantasy in a post-industrial life. In a world where men like Quayle are crushed under the weight of conformity, consumerism, and repression, the fantasy of espionage becomes a release valve. Dick's bitter joke is that even our fantasies of rebellion are prefabricated and controllable. Even if you dream of fighting the system, you might be enacting a script someone else wrote.
I think it was probably 74 that I optioned this story. It was Phil Dick, who was then not a known author at all. Phil Dick was a struggling pulp writer most of his career until Blade Runner got made. The original Total Recall, which was then called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. It appeared in one of those magazines I always used to read, Galaxy, and fantasy science fiction. And it appeared there. It was a 23-page short story. This was the first story that knocked me right out, which I knew could make an incredible movie. I knew it would be incredibly expensive.
Before we got the phrase, "Get your ass to Mars, do it now," Total Recall had a production journey nearly as disorienting as its protagonist's fractured psyche. What began as a short story from the godfather of techno-paranoia would take more than a decade to reach the screen. It was dragged through development hell, shaped by changing tides in Hollywood, rewritten constantly by a rotating carousel of screenwriters and directors, and eventually reborn as a unique hybrid. Part existential mind-bender, part sci-fi shoot-'em-up, and part satire wrapped in blood. Hollywood saw potential, but didn't know what to do with the adaptation. In the mid-1970s, the rights were acquired by Ron Suchet and Dan O'Bannon, fresh off their collaborative work on Dark Star and in the earlier stages of crafting what would become Alien. Suchet, who'd originally intended to adapt Dick's story into a low-budget thriller, was immediately drawn to the core premise of a man discovering his entire life was a lie. But the narrative, as it stood, lacked cinematic propulsion. It was cerebral, introspective, and primarily concerned with internal conflict and subtle shifts in perception, which is great for literature, but was considered death for film. To transform the material into a marketable screenplay, Suchet and O'Bannon made several major changes. They shifted the protagonist's name from Quayle to Quaid, added the Mars action subplot, and introduced the idea of a resistance movement and a villainous corporation mining the planet's resources while oppressing its mutated inhabitants. In other words, they took the abstract psychological horror of the original story and tethered it to a red-blooded science fiction rebellion narrative, a move that turned a metaphysical parable into something resembling Blade Runner with a dash of James Bond. And yet, even with a promising script, Total Recall became a cursed project. No studio wanted to touch it. It was too weird for its time, too ambitious for its budget, and too expensive for its intellectual complexity. For years, it bounced from hand to hand like a hot coal. At one point, David Cronenberg was attached to direct, a pairing that, in hindsight, feels almost perfect. Cronenberg saw in the material a warped opportunity to explore bodily horror and the instability of consciousness. He reworked the script extensively, leaning into the idea that the mutations on Mars were the product of biological trauma, and that Quaid's unraveling mind mirrored the corrupt physiology of the Martian colonists. In Cronenberg's version, mutants weren't just aesthetic quirks, they were narrative keys to understanding the layered artificiality of reality. Cronenberg stayed on the project for nearly a year, developing a version that was darker, slower, and more grotesque than what we got. He even created a character named Quarto, the psychic mutant leader who would survive in the final film. But the studio balked at his surreal, anti-commercial vision, and creative differences drove him away. In Cronenberg's own words, the producers wanted Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he was giving them naked lunch. So he walked away, and the project went cold again.
Arnold Schwarzenegger said to me, "Well, you know what you've done. You've written the Philip K. Dick version." I said, "Well, I thought that's what we were supposed to do. It is based on a Philip K. Dick story. I love Philip Dick. That's what I thought we were doing." He said, "No, we want this movie to be like Raiders of the Lost Ark Go to Mars." I said, "Well, okay, I'm not doing that movie." So I said goodbye.
By the mid-1980s, Total Recall was considered unfilmable. The sheer cost of building the Mars sets, staging futuristic action sequences, and wrangling the high-concept script pushed every studio away. Even Dino De Laurentiis, who'd successfully guided David Lynch's Dune, passed on it. But then came Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold had always loved it, but he wasn't as big a star as he was. He read it 4 years earlier.
Well, I was always on top of that movie and checked it out because I loved that story.
Arnold really wanted to do it and never got the chance. And Dino was very adamant you wouldn't get it. So when the project was in jeopardy and when Dino had to sell it, Arnold rushed to Mario Casar and said, "That is the script you have to buy for me."
So they bought it within the next few hours, made a deal.
And then I get this call from Arnold. He said, "Ron, get ready, pack your bags, we go to make the movie." I said, "What?" He said, "Isn't there a movie you've been trying to make for about 10 years? I said, "Oh, it's in bankruptcy." He said, "Well, I just took it out. Pack up. We're making the movie right away." And that was it.
At the time, he was the reigning king of cinema, having conquered the world with Conan the Barbarian, The Terminator, Commando, and Predator. His name alone could greenlight a film, and when he got wind that De Laurentiis was losing the rights to Total Recall, he pounced. Schwarzenegger had always loved the idea of playing against type in a sci-fi thriller that made audiences question reality, and he saw an opportunity not just to star, but to influence production. He convinced Coralco Pictures, flush with Rambo cash money, to purchase the rights and let him handpick the director. This is how we got Paul Verhoeven, who just finished turning RoboCop into a bloody satirical masterpiece, which we covered 2 weeks ago. Verhoeven was a great choice because he understood the absurdity of the film's premise, but never mocked it. He embraced the violence, the camp, and the philosophical weight of the story in equal measure. He and screenwriter Gary Goldman reshaped the script again, keeping elements from Cronenberg, Suchet, and O'Bannon, while adding new scenes, characters, and themes. The new drafts emphasized the ambiguity of Quaid's reality. Was this all a dream, a delusion, or a buried truth? And laid in corporate satire, political allegory, and a surprising amount of heart.
I felt it was extremely important for me, from a philosophical level, to make a movie that had two levels, and that both levels throughout would always be consistent, and that you could never say, now we are in a dream, or now we are in reality.
It was Paul who honed in on the idea that we should really take seriously the idea that the whole thing might really be a dream.
What is a dream? What is just an imagination? What is an artificial reality? What is an implanted reality?
Even at the very end, there is no decision made. And at the very end, he says, kiss me fast before the dream ends, isn't it? If it is a dream. And then we fade to white.
Arnold Schwarzenegger was not just a star of the film, he was the reason the film existed in the first place. Initially, the role of Douglas Quaid had been conceived for an everyman. In earlier iterations, producers flirted with actors like Richard Dreyfuss, Patrick Swayze, William Hurt, and even Jeff Bridges, men whose faces and builds could reasonably blend into the anonymity of a working-class technician. The idea, especially in the Cronenberg era, was to play up the banality of Quaid's initial life to maximize the surreal impact of his transformation, but Schwarzenegger was anything but ordinary. His size, charisma, and cinematic persona meant that the character had to be rewritten around him. Verhoeven leaned into this by making Quaid a blue-collar construction worker instead, with muscles built for combat, even if his psyche wasn't.
In the original versions, the character was more like a kind of timid, nearly accountant type, which was completely a different approach.
I thought that that switch from being powerful physically and then being put in the position of being vulnerable is a much more, a stronger kind of contrast. And that's why I thought that the character should be played by me rather than by someone that is an ordinary kind of a looking guy.
Instead of a subtle psychological confusion, Arnold brought a physicality that turned Quaid's identity crisis into a battlefield. And it worked. Schwarzenegger plays the part with surprising nuance, balancing his usual one-liners and explosive physicality with an underlying uncertainty. His Quaid is a man genuinely caught between fantasy and reality, punching his way through existential dread. Verhoeven, knowing Arnold's range was limited but effective within a certain lane, crafted scenes that highlighted the tension between his body and his mind. When he sees himself on a monitor giving instructions to himself as Hauser, his past self, the moment becomes one of genuine existential horror. It's a rare Schwarzenegger role that allows him to question his own identity rather than simply assert it. The casting around Schwarzenegger had to support this tonal tightrope. Verhoeven wanted characters that felt grounded, heightened, exaggerated, but never unconvincing.
I'd like to show you my honorary stunt woman association. I earned this, okay?
Sharon Stone was terrific to work with because she was as dedicated as all the other ones were. She was training like a machine. I mean, she was like the female Terminator.
Sharon Stone was cast as Laurie, Quaid's quote-unquote wife, in what would become one of her early breakout roles. Stone was perfectly suited to the part, not just because of her classic beauty and sharp presence, but because she could turn on a dime. She embodied both the idealized suburban partner and the deadly corporate assassin beneath the surface. Her switch from doting wife to smirking killer remains one of the film's great pivots, and her chemistry with Schwarzenegger was electric in its antagonism. Verhoeven was so impressed with her ability to play menace and warmth in the same scene that he cast her as the lead in Basic Instinct just 2 years later.
This is great, isn't it, here? This kind of diabolical sweetness of her.
Yeah.
I mean, this turnaround from sweetie to the ultimate devil, isn't it?
Oh, she can snap. I mean, she can be as sweet and vulnerable and engaging.
That was really the moment that later, when I was doing Basic Instinct, I thought, perhaps she can do that.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps she can really play this woman, let's say, Catherine Tremell, by using these, because Catherine Tremell is also going up and down between charm and diabolical, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that she is perfect for that role.
To counterbalance Laurie, Rachel Ticotin was brought in as Melina, the freedom fighter and love interest from Quaid's memories, or dreams. Ticotin gave Melina a grounded toughness. She wasn't a glamour model disguised as a rebel. She looked like someone who'd lived a hard life in Martian tunnels and had the scars to prove it. In many ways, Melina is less of a love interest and more of a psychological anchor, someone who represents Quaid's imagined better life, whether or not she's real.
It was clear that to keep the budget in balance, we could not afford, next to Arnold, some other people that would be extremely expensive. Rachel came in the first day and Sharon came in the second day. And I did scenes with them personally. I just tested them and did the scenes of Arnold. And after 3 days of casting, I said to Arnold, I think we have the girls, you know. I mean, this is Rachel and this is Sharon.
The supporting cast is filled with memorable faces. Ronnie Cox, who'd play the corporate villain Dick Jones in RoboCop, was brought in by Verhoeven to play Vilos Cohagen, the governor of Mars and the corrupt corporate overlord. Cox has a unique gift for smiling while saying monstrous things, and Verhoeven exploited that to maximum effect. Cohagen hoards oxygen, exploits mutants, and lies to the public, all while sipping scotch and emasculating his men.
He's the be-all and end-all on Mars. There is no limit to his powers on Mars, and he relishes using that power.
Michael Ironside, another Verhoeven favorite, plays Richter, Cohagen's enforcer and Laurie's real lover. Ironside imbues Richter with relentless aggression and barely concealed jealousy. He's not just trying to kill Quaid, he's furious that his girl had to sleep with him for cover. These dynamics add texture to what could have been standard goons and henchmen.
Michael Ironside, an actor known for the intensity of his performances, portrays Richter, perhaps the most ruthless villain he has ever played.
Yeah, Richter's a very obsessive character who basically runs through this film, killing anything and destroying anything that gets in his way. Yeah, he's a wild card. He's a know-it-all. He's self-obsessed. He's not a good team player. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Production officially began in Mexico City in 1989. Coralco Pictures, lifted by the enormous success of Verhoeven's RoboCop, had granted him an enormous $65 million budget, one of the highest ever for an R-rated film at the time. Much of that would go into building colossal sets, hiring a massive effects team, and supporting an extended international shoot. Mexico City was chosen both for cost-saving measures and for its brutalist, monolithic architecture, which lent itself perfectly to Verhoeven's vision of a cold, bureaucratic future Earth and the inhospitable colony on Mars. With the right lighting, Mexico's subway system and surrounding infrastructure became a believable dystopia, one part Orwell and one part Mobius.
We were forced by the production company to work in Mexico City. I want to shoot a movie mostly in Houston. They shot, in fact, RoboCop 2 now in Houston. And somehow, for financial reasons, we had to go to Mexico City. Mexico City is not a futuristic city like Houston, but I found a style of architecture there called New Brutalism, which is extremely kind of futuristic, very bold, strong, concrete stuff in a kind of an Aztec style that looks different. Then we said, okay, everything what in this film is Earth will be these kind of buildings, so that would be the style.
In March 1989, Verhoeven and his crew invaded the Churubusco studios in Mexico City. For 5 months, they took over every inch of the cavernous facility, creating more than 40 mammoth sets on all 10 sound stages. Overseeing 3 separate film units, Verhoeven created 2 vastly different worlds of the future.
Yet filming in Mexico City brought its own challenges, not least of which was the physical toll it took on the cast and crew. The city's high altitude, pollution, and questionable water supply created an environment where illness spread rapidly. Nearly everyone on set, crew, stuntmen, supporting actors, succumbed to dysentery at some point, except for Verhoeven and Schwarzenegger, who subsisted on bottled water and carefully monitored diets. The production was even nicknamed Total Food Poisoning behind the scenes, a fitting badge for the kind of suffering that seemed to define the shoot. Despite this, the scale of the practical sets was jaw-dropping. Production designer William Sandell and art director Gene Rabas created massive physical environments and used matte paintings rather than rely on early CGI. Virtually everything was built full scale. The recall office, the Mars colony slums, Cohagen's control center, the alien reactor, the corridors of the Martian mines, and the sprawling Martian underground. These weren't just facades, they were explorable environments with functioning doors, elevators, and working machinery. The level of detail was astonishing, from the grime in the underground resistance tunnels to the sterile, bureaucratic coldness of the recall headquarters. The film's entire Mars setting was created inside massive sound stages at a studio's Churubusco in Mexico, filling them wall-to-wall with futuristic design and alien iconography.
This was one of the last of the non-digitally composited movies, so we had to figure out ways of filming with cameras and actual miniatures almost all of the images. Except for the skeletons that appeared on the skeleton screens, everything that you see is something that has been created and photographed by camera.
Well, it's a rumor, isn't it?
I think so. For example, when we see Arnold on the train heading into the Mars City, and that was done with 3 different scales of miniatures and motion control camera moves that tied them in together. Very complicated and very difficult to do.
Verhoeven's directing style was intense. He insisted on dozens of takes, pushed actors to their physical limits, and operated with a manic energy that kept the production in a constant state of chaos. Known for his shouting and hand-waving, he would physically demonstrate how he wanted actors to scream, twitch, or die, much to the astonishment of his cast and crew. His philosophy was simple. Science fiction only works when it's played at full volume. Quiet contemplation was for European cinema. Total Recall was American. Therefore, it needed to be a symphony of explosions, blood squibs, bone-shattering punches, and psychological unraveling. That philosophy extended to the film's amazing action sequences. The gunfights in Total Recall are loud, fast, and unrelenting, each one choreographed to resemble a frenzied ballet of squibs and shattering glass. The production used practical blood effects, often exaggerated to heighten the sense of carnage. Verhoeven wanted every bullet wound to hurt, every kill to be a spectacle. For instance, in the iconic escalator shootout sequence, a civilian is riddled with bullets as Schwarzenegger uses his corpse as a human shield. The sequence took days to film and involved complex timing, squib detonations, and stunt coordination, but the result was one of the film's most memorable, over-the-top moments.
Was attacked because of the violence. The scene on the elevator was a good example on that. An innocent bystander is killed. But I thought, okay, this is just a piece of meat. That's a very uncomfortable statement, of course. This whole body was blown to pieces, really. I shouldn't laugh about it, but I laugh about it because it's film. It's not real. A lot of people have complained that there are 50, 60 people killed or something like that. Yeah, that's true. He is supposed to be a really super agent in it, a James Bond in Square. So I felt that he was a guy that was able to blow away everybody.
Another standout sequence was the Martian decompression scenes, where Verhoeven leaned into body horror as characters convulsed and screamed under the pressure of a thin atmosphere. This required complex prosthetics and animatronics. Life-size dummies of the characters were created with pneumatic systems embedded inside to simulate bulging eyes and gasping mouths. The result is pure Verhoeven, equal parts disturbing, absurd, and darkly comic. These moments, which would feel cartoonish under a lesser director, are elevated by his commitment to the visceral and the extreme. Production was further complicated by the film's visual effects requirements, which were among the most ambitious of their time. The legendary Rob Bottin, who'd previously stunned audiences with his makeup work on The Thing and RoboCop, was brought in to design the prosthetics and animatronics, including Quarto, the parasitic psychic mutant who lives in the stomach of a host body. Quarto was a marvel of puppetry, requiring multiple puppeteers and intricate controls to simulate facial expressions, breathing, and speech. The performance was so convincing that many viewers assumed it was an actor in makeup rather than a complex animatronic.
The construction, of course, is from Rob Bottin, and it's all puppet engineered. There are about 15-20 puppeteers to do arms, fingers, eyeballs, cheeks, the frowning of the head, all done by different puppeteers. The chest of Marshall Bell is fake, of course, so we built a whole body, a new chest, plus this little being, Quarto. We built that on Marshall Bell. Very difficult because it took 6 hours or 4 or 5 hours to build it on his body, but you couldn't go to the restroom.
Another technical marvel was the X-ray skeleton scanner sequence, which combined live action with cutting-edge computer graphics. This is one of the earliest uses of CG in a major Hollywood film, and while it looks primitive today, at the time it was revolutionary. The scene involved the actors walking through a wall of light while a monitor displayed their skeletons in real time, an effect achieved by compositing live footage with animated skeletons that matched the actors' movements. It was a grueling process that involved painstaking frame-by-frame alignment, but it gave the film a technological edge that most of its contemporaries lacked. The post-production phase was no less demanding. Editor Frank J. Urost had previously worked on Die Hard and RoboCop, was tasked with shaping the film's chaos into a coherent narrative. This was no small feat. Verhoeven's manic direction and the film's dreamlike structure made traditional pacing difficult. The film oscillates between reality and surreal hallucination, and he had to maintain that ambiguity without confusing the audience or undermining the emotional stakes. The result is a brisk, relentless film that rarely slows down, but always feels anchored by a core mystery. Is Quaid really a secret agent, or is he just a delusional construction worker lost in his own mind?
The music brings the other team in, isn't it? At the very end, if you listen to the music, Jerry Goldsmith brings in the team of let's say of Dream.
It wasn't a thing; it was a little motif. I think it was electronic actually, and it was sort of planted earlier in the movie, I guess, as sort of one of the big question marks.
From the point of view that it was all a dream, he gets lobotomized. Of course, an audience with Arnold Schwarzenegger in the main part would not want him to dream. So to a large degree, by choosing Arnold, there was a preference for reality.
People saw the movie and they came out of it saying, well, was it a dream or was it real? Because I thought that was just kind of people would sort of take that as like just a little curly cue at the end, and they wouldn't really take it seriously. But they did, they got into it.
Sound design played a crucial role in amplifying the film's surreal atmosphere. The whirring of futuristic machinery, the hiss of Martian airlocks, the wet squelch of mutant appendages, every sound was meticulously crafted. The score by Jerry Goldsmith added yet another layer, mixing heroic swells with eerie sci-fi tones. The music underscores Quaid's transformation from ordinary man to mythic figure, while also teasing the film's ambiguity. Is this real, or is it the soundtrack to a manufactured memory? Color grading and final optical compositing helped distinguish between Earth and Mars sequences. Earth scenes were kept relatively desaturated and harshly lit to accentuate the sterile corporate tone of the real world. In contrast, Mars scenes used deeper reds, exaggerated shadows, and saturated color palettes to reinforce the feeling of heightened reality or fantasy. By the end of post-production, Total Recall had become a Frankenstein's monster of practical effects, animatronics, early CGI, and traditional film wizardry. It was a film made at the apex of analog ambition, just before the full arrival of the digital age. The process was hellish, the conditions grueling, and the demands difficult, but the result was something electric. Total Recall feels lived in, dangerous and unhinged, like a fever dream carved into Martian stone. It's a product of its time, yet somehow timeless, a sci-fi spectacle that plays as both a blockbuster thrill ride and an existential puzzle box.
I think for its time it did very well. I mean, it made a lot of money all over the world. I think at that time it was $250 million.
It was a big hit. It opened very big, and everybody really liked it.
Whenever you go anywhere in the world, Total Recall is always mentioned. Everyone in the world recognizes the title because the movie was so big. That just shows you how big it was in my career, how important it was in my career. And it really made me make a big leap forward because of Total Recall.
In the not-so-distant future of 2084, blue-collar everyman Douglas Quaid spends his days operating jackhammers and his nights tormented by recurring dreams of Mars. But this Mars is no ordinary red rock in his imagination. It's a violent, alluring frontier soaked in mystery, political unrest, and the seductive silhouette of a woman who's definitely not his wife. Said wife, Laurie, lives with him in sleek domesticity, offering zero explanations for his night terrors but plenty of toned aerobic reassurance. But something inside Quaid is screaming to break free, to get off this planet and, most importantly, to get to Mars.
You're dreaming. Is it about Mars? This is getting to be an obsession.
He gets his chance when, against the advice of his co-workers, he stumbles into Recall, a company promising memory vacations to anywhere your heart desires. No need to pack a bag or even leave your chair. For Quaid, the pitch is irresistible. He'll get all the thrill of being a Mars-bound secret agent with none of the danger.
Let me suggest that you take a vacation from yourself.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
No, I'm telling you, Doug, your brain will not know the difference. Besides, a real holiday is a pain in the butt.
But as the needle plunges and the fantasies start to upload, something goes terribly wrong. The techs at Recall uncover a psychological landmine. Buried beneath the facade of construction worker Quaid is another identity, someone who's already undergone a memory wipe. Reality fractures, Quaid snaps, and what was supposed to be a harmless virtual holiday quickly becomes a full-blown manhunt.
He's just acting out the secret agent portion of his ego trip.
We haven't implanted it yet.
And if anybody comes asking, we never even heard of Douglas Quaid.
Huh? How did I get in this taxi? The door opened. You got in.
The Recall team, now panicking that they've stirred a hornet's nest, begins scrambling to sedate Quaid and wipe the traces of their meddling. They send him home, hoping the storm will pass. It doesn't. Quaid awakens disoriented and with no idea how he got here.
Listen, I'm already late. Thank you very much, but...
Harry, you're making a big mistake.
Soon he's jumped by Harry, a co-worker who warned him against visiting Recall. The conversation quickly devolves into a brawl, and Quaid kills Harry and his squad with feral, instinctive precision. This is the first real signal that Quaid may not be who he thinks he is. From this point on, Quaid is a man on the run, uncertain of who he really is or who to trust. What makes him compelling is that he's both the audience surrogate and a cipher. His shifting identity embodies the film's central question: what is real? Quaid's journey from passive dreamer to revolutionary liberator mirrors the philosophical conundrum of self-perception and free will. When he stumbles back into his apartment seeking solace, his sweet, supportive wife transforms into a lethal sleeper agent. The film cleverly weaponizes domesticity. Laurie's turn from loving spouse to company assassin reveals that his life has been an elaborately constructed lie. Their marriage, a fabrication. Her affection, programmed. Her mission, to monitor him for the agency, which reports to Mars' iron-fisted overlord, Velos Cohagen.
You're having paranoid delusions.
You call this a delusion? See, I went to this Recall place after work.
You went to those brain butchers? What did they do to you, tell me?
Sharon Stone's performance is a masterclass in duplicity. Laurie represents the manufactured nature of Quaid's life and the seductive veneer of comfort that hides control. Cohagen, meanwhile, is the quintessential sci-fi villain, corrupt, manipulative, and absurdly confident in his own power. He controls the flow of oxygen on Mars and manipulates both the surface narrative and its deeper metaphysical layers. Cohagen is both the oppressive force Quaid must fight against and the architect of the entire dream illusion scenario.
If I wanted him dead, you moron, I wouldn't have dumped him on Earth. We can't... Did you hear me?
After escaping their clutches, Quaid receives help from an unlikely ally, a man claiming to be a friend who leaves him a briefcase containing weapons, disguises, and a device to rip the tracking chip from his skull in a scene as delightfully grotesque as it is symbolic. Inside the case is also a video recorded by himself, but not Quaid as he knows him. This is Hauser, a grinning, confident operative who reveals that Quaid is the product of a mind wipe orchestrated by Cohagen himself.
You are not you. You're me. No shit.
Hauser used to be Cohagen's top enforcer until he apparently fell in love with a rebel and switched sides. To protect sensitive information, Cohagen scrambled Hauser's brain and dumped him back on Earth with a new identity. Now, Hauser wants Quaid to finish what he started, to get to Mars, find the resistance, and bring down Cohagen's regime.
And here comes the hard part, old buddy. Now it is all up to you.
Great. It's here the film starts playing a brilliant shell game with identity. Is Quaid a hero waking up from a fake life, or is he just living out a fantasy he paid for? Verhoeven never gives us a clean answer, and that ambiguity is the film's darkly delicious hook. On Mars, things only get stranger. Quaid dons a disguise straight out of a Looney Tunes nightmare and follows instructions from his past self to reach Venusville, a district of mutants and marginalized humans, casualties of Cohagen's refusal to provide clean air to the poorer sectors. These people, living under cracked domes and neon shadows, are symbolic of the film's class war subtext, corporate monarchy versus the mutated masses.
The Martians love Kawato. They think he's f***ing George Washington.
Meanwhile, Richter, who has a penchant for excessive violence and a relentless grudge, hunts Quaid across Mars with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The tension between the two men is primal, as much about masculinity and ego as it is about politics or ideology. Ironside gives Richter a sadistic glee, making him an iconic Schwarzenegger foil. His every failure to kill Quaid only increases his obsession.
I don't blame you, man. I wouldn't want a guy like Quaid porking my old lady.
Douglas Quaid, possibly still just a humble construction worker, possibly a brainwashed secret agent, is eventually drawn to the sleazy bar known as The Last Resort, a neon-lit refuge for misfits and the mutated underclass.
Hello, Hauser. Still bulging, I see.
It's here he finally finds Melina, the woman who's haunted his dreams and allegedly shared a real past with him when he was still the man known as Hauser. But Melina doesn't welcome him with open arms. She's scornful, suspicious, and accuses him of being a double agent who betrayed the rebellion from within.
Sick of you and your goddamn lies.
Why would I lie to you? Melina Hauser sent me to do something.
I'm not falling for it.
Melina is both the idealized fantasy woman promised by Recall's package and a freedom fighter on Mars. Whether she's a constructed element of Quaid's dream or the flesh and blood embodiment of Hauser's past, Melina represents independence, resistance, and autonomy. Her skepticism of Quaid at first reflects her suspicion that he's still Cohagen's puppet, but as they bond through shared struggle, she becomes his anchor. In a narrative that questions everything, Melina's fierce loyalty and grounded nature stand out as one of the few potentially real aspects of Quaid's shifting identity. Reeling from her rejection and still trying to piece together who he is, Quaid returns to his hotel room only to find himself confronted by a surreal intervention. Laurie, his maybe not wife, but actually maybe surveillance handler, and a nervous, clammy Dr. Edgemire from Recall arrive with an unsettling proposition. According to them, none of what Quaid has experienced is real. He is, in fact, still sedated back at Recall on Earth, trapped in a cascading psychotic episode triggered by the memory implant process gone wrong.
I'm sorry to tell you this, Mr. Quaid, but you've suffered a schizoid embolism. You paid to be a secret agent.
Bullshit.
They explain that the wild narrative, secret agents, Mars revolutions, mutants, and alien reactors is merely the brain's way of constructing meaning from chaos as it tries to reconcile conflicting memories. Edgemire then pleads with Quaid to take a pill, the only way to stabilize his fractured mind and bring him back to reality before his brain suffers irreparable damage.
But in the end, back on Earth, you'll be lobotomized.
Edgemire delivers the film's most overt challenge to reality, and for a moment, Quaid hesitates. He considers it. Schwarzenegger plays the scene with uncertainty, half believing, half paranoid, until a single bead of sweat running down Edgemire's temple breaks the illusion. Quaid then shoots the doctor in the head without hesitation, shattering the already fragile line between perception and truth. It's a moment that perfectly captures the central dilemma. What do you do when the reality you know might be fiction, and the fiction might be real? No time for introspection though, because Richter's men storm the room. A blistering firefight erupts and Melina comes in just in time to save Quaid. During the escape, Laurie gets in one final confrontation, trying to stop Quaid with equal parts seduction and aggression. It doesn't work. Quaid kills her, ending the illusion of domesticity once and for all. It's one of the film's many inversions. Quaid is no longer the man who sleeps beside false comfort. He chooses war, truth, and chaos over the safety of lies.
Consider that a divorce.
Kawato wants to see you. Come on.
With their cabbie Benny driving them through the subterranean veins of Mars, Quaid and Melina escape back to Venusville. The Resistance manages to hold off Richter's forces temporarily, but Cohaagen responds with cruelty. He cuts off the air supply, initiating a slow suffocation meant to kill everyone without firing a shot. It's a silent genocide by bureaucracy.
Sir, the oxygen level is bottoming out in Sector G. What do you want me to do about it?
Fuck him.
Guided by the Resistance, many of whom die trying to protect him, Quaid finally meets the elusive rebel leader Kuato, a psychic mutant fused to the stomach of his host George. Through psychic touch, Kuato unlocks Quaid's buried memories and sees the truth that Cohaagen has tried to keep hidden. Deep within the Martian crust lies a 500,000-year-old alien reactor, left by a vanished civilization.
Open your mind.
This reactor, once activated, will generate a breathable atmosphere for Mars by releasing stored oxygen trapped under glacial ice, but it will also destroy the turbinium ore reserves, thereby shattering Cohaagen's monopoly and ending his chokehold on the planet. Kuato's otherworldly presence and gentle tone evoke both hope and horror. He's the embodiment of the mystical force that Cohaagen fears.
A man is defined by his actions, not his memory.
Before they can act, Benny betrays them, enabling Richter and his men to ambush the rebels and shoot Kuato. In his final breath, Kuato implores Quaid to
start the reactor.
Quaid and Melina are then captured and brought to Cohaagen, who finally lays all the cards on the table. The twist: Quaid was never really a rebel. He was always Hauser, a close ally and friend of Cohaagen. This entire journey, Melina, the Resistance, even the recall visit, was a long con designed by Hauser himself. His personality was erased temporarily, implanted with Quaid's mild-mannered construction worker identity to bypass the telepaths protecting the rebellion. Cohaagen's plan was to reawaken Hauser after he completed his infiltration mission. In other words, Quaid wasn't becoming a hero, he was a Trojan horse programmed by the villain.
If you're listening to this, that means that Kuato is dead and you have led us to him.
It's the film's most brutal revelation, a commentary on agency itself. If you were once evil but forgot, does that make you good? If your personality is a program, are you anything more than code in a meat suit? Luckily, before Quaid can be rewritten again and Melina turned into Hauser's compliant companion, they break free. This final act becomes a whirlwind of gunfights, betrayals, and chase sequences through Mars' industrial bowels.
I'm gonna drill you! I'm gonna grind you up! Screw you!
Benny tries to kill Quaid using a tunneling machine, but our hero brutally dispatches him with a drill. Benny is emblematic of how illusion permeates this world. Every ally might be an enemy, every enemy might be an ally, and every joke can end in tragedy. His violent manic breakdown is memorable not just for the gore, but for what it says about trust in a world of deceit.
I got 4 kids to feed, so what happened to number 5? You got me. I ain't even married.
After killing most of Cohaagen's men, the last showdown between Quaid and Richter is equally memorable, with Richter losing his grip and both arms in a brutally cartoonish elevator death. Quaid and Melina are sent to the alien reactor control room, where Cohaagen is already waiting.
I am Quaid.
You're a stupid dream. All dreams come to an end.
With a countdown to catastrophe ticking, Cohaagen threatens to destroy the reactor with explosives, warning that activating it could destabilize the entire planet. But Quaid hurls the explosive into a tunnel, blasting open a breach to Mars' surface. The resulting decompression sucks Cohaagen into the void, where he dies gasping in the vacuum, a fitting end for a man who commodified oxygen. Quaid and Melina are then flung into the Martian surface as the reactor activates. Instead of destruction, a miracle unfolds. The reactor superheats ancient glacial ice, releasing massive quantities of oxygen. A new sky then forms over Mars, and the toxic red dust is swept away by breathable air. Windows crack open, colonists emerge, blinking at the blue heavens, liberated by alien technology, not politics.
I can't believe it. It's like a dream.
I just had a terrible thought. What if this is a dream?
In the final moment, Quaid wonders whether any of this is real or just a fantasy he paid for at recall. Melina pulls him in for a kiss and reassures him with the perfect answer.
Well then, kiss me quick before you wake up.
The ending plays with the line between reality and illusion. One view is that everything after Quaid's visit to Recall is real. His true identity as Hauser never reawakens. He turns against Cohagen, liberates Mars, and embraces his identity as a hero. The emotional payoff supports this heroic arc. Another interpretation argues it's all a Recall-induced fantasy. The events align too perfectly with the vacation package that Quaid purchased. Mars, secret agent, exotic woman, planetary salvation, suggesting a dream gone awry. Clues like Dr. Edgemar's warning, the dramatic pacing, and the bizarre nature of the ending reinforce this reading, implying Quaid is lobotomized or lost in psychosis. A third possibility holds that both realities exist simultaneously, a dream that unearths real memories or merges fantasy with truth, echoing Dick's core themes of fractured identity and subjective reality. Of course, Verhoeven has never confirmed either reading, preferring the story's power to rest in its existential uncertainty, where the question of what is real becomes the ultimate provocation.
The script has two levels, in fact. It's a big science fiction action movie, but it has also something else. It's about something about the mind or your sense of reality. Is what we are living in, is this real, or are we the dream of somebody else? Yeah, are we God's dream, or are we really in complete reality? And I think they thought that I could hit that level too. That I would do all the action and science fiction well, but I could also give it another touch that would make the film not empty. I don't think it's an empty film.
For me, Total Recall is more than a Schwarzenegger action vehicle. It's a meditation on the fragility of the self, the unreliability of memory, and the dehumanizing grip of corporate power. It's violent, absurd, and profound all at once. Whether you view it as science fiction or psychodrama, satire or story, one thing is certain. If it's all just a dream, it's one hell of a dream.
It was a dream project. If Arnold's body is the perfect vehicle for his soul, this movie is a kind of perfect vehicle for Arnold.
And of course, this had the brilliance of the Phil Dick concept to play off of, and that's why it was such a milestone movie. It was a thinking man's action movie.
Is it the reality of a dream, or is it the reality of somebody that has a dream but comes out of the dream?
How would you know if someone stole your mind?